The exciting life and reign of Queen Elizabeth II and what we can learn from her. Princess Alexandra Mary came from a royal family but had no expectation of ever becoming queen, but princess's life became worthy for a whole nation. How? Why? Let's just find out in this video. After her uncle and father, Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary, or Lilibet as she is known to her family, was born on April 21, 1926. Lilibet's life was set on a different path by a controversial royal love affair, and she went on to become the longest reigning queen of the United Kingdom, a beloved symbol of stability and continuity, and maybe the world's most well-known female celebrity. Her uncle King Edward VIII abdicated in 1936 after his proposal of marriage to an American divorcee, Wallis Simpson, sparked a scandal that engulfed the royal family and ensnared the country's leaders on the eve of World War II. Elizabeth's father George VI became king against his will, making her the rightful heir to the throne. After her father's untimely death, Elizabeth ascended the throne at the age of 25. Elizabeth and her sister moved to live in Windsor while the war was on, but their parents remained in London during the intense German bombing. In 1940, she delivered her first radio message to other children who had been evacuated from their homes. As the war drew to a close, the young princess enlisted in the all-female Auxiliary Territorial Service and began studying to become a mechanic. The young princess started dating her future husband throughout the war. Her third cousin, once removed, the Greek Prince Philip, spent the majority of his formative years in England. Due to the Greek Revolution, he and his family was forced to leave their home and possessions behind, leaving them largely destitute. Having initially met at a family wedding in 1934, they reconnected in 1939 when she was 13 and he was 18. They corresponded while he was serving overseas, but his history and her age caused anxiety among the royal family. They went on drives in Philip's little MG sports car and club hopping in London during their courtship. After Elizabeth returned from her maiden vacation abroad to South Africa in July 1947, the couple announced their engagement. In the same month of their wedding, Philip gave up his Greek title and citizenship to become a British subject. 2 years later, they uprooted to Malta, where Philip served as a naval officer and she could lead a somewhat private life. It has been theorized by royal watchers that Elizabeth's happiest years were during this period when she was permitted to drive her own car and socialize with other officers' wives. The temporary independence ended when King George's health, which had been failing for some time, suddenly deteriorated. Elizabeth was in Kenya on a royal trip with Philip when he died in February 1952. A member of Philip's staff had informed him and he told Elizabeth while they were strolling. At the age of 99, Philip passed away in April 2021 after having retired from his official royal duties in 2017. He and Elizabeth shared a 73-year marriage. Elizabeth is survived by her husband, Prince Charles, her sons Prince Andrew and Edward, her daughter Princess Anne, 4 grandsons, 4 granddaughters, and 12 great-grandchildren. Charles and Princess Diana's troubled marriage was widely reported on in the early 1990s and ended in divorce in 1992. Queen Elizabeth II called 1992 an annus horribilis, or catastrophic year. When Diana was killed in a vehicle disaster in Paris 5 years later, the world mourned and Elizabeth was condemned for remaining mute and retreating to her Scottish house with her son Charles and Diana's boys, her grandsons Prince William and Harry. Nearly a week later, the Queen returned to London and held a memorial service for Diana. In a 1997 address, she admitted that the monarchy exists only with the support and agreement of the people. Decade after decade, through family scandals and the tragedy of a dead princess, she smiled, waved, shook hands, and chatted with a great number of her subjects and admirers on her way from being a youthful queen to the grandmother of the nation. Her unflappable positivity and dependability won the hearts of the British people. With the exception of Lyndon B. Johnson, she met and worked with all other US presidents and 15 British prime ministers in the 70 years since becoming queen. even after her death. Her popularity was still quite high, as the vast majority of Britons had never known any other monarch. During her 70-year reign, which spanned the Industrial Revolution and the advent of the Internet, Elizabeth met many legendary world leaders, the vast majority of whom were men. She also guided Britain through the decline and eventual recovery from the damage of its empire and its emergence as a middle-sized multicultural nation. She ruled at a time of great cultural and political upheaval, including the decline of British imperial power and the rise of the modern information and media industries. For the duration, she and her family were subjected to extraordinary amounts of media attention and had a tense relationship with the press at times. To keep the crown relevant in an ever-evolving world, Elizabeth also directed the monarchy's transformation into an advocate of a weakened United Kingdom at home and abroad. She has been the focus of numerous films, plays, and television shows like The Crown, The Queen, and The Royal House of Windsor because of her enduring interest in her and her family's life and legacy. She's an experienced leader who won't mess things up. She said it like no one else ever has. One recent example of this is the Queen's early address to the United Kingdom during the pandemic. With an unusual radio address, she called on her listeners to emulate the self-discipline and calm, good-humored resolve of earlier generations. Postage stamps, paper currency, and even mailboxes all included portraits of the Queen since she was so crucial to the British government. The Queen of the United Kingdom, after an election, issues a call to the various political parties to form a government. In addition to signing off on all legislation passed by Parliament, the monarch also regularly confers with the Prime Minister. In accordance with the law, they may advise and warn government officials. Elizabeth's ability to seem everywhere at once and remain a mystery was essential to what is generally considered to have been a successful reign. She managed to do this despite living a public life that was constantly in the spotlight by refraining from making any political or otherwise diversive statements. Throughout her reign, the Queen helped the United Kingdom adjust to its new post-World War II role. This role was significantly reduced due to the loss of British colonies around the world. The monarch stressed her role as leader of the Commonwealth, an association of more than 50 nations, many of which are former British colonies. Her extensive world excursions, many of them on the Royal Yacht Britannia, boosted Britain's international prestige and added a touch of glamour to the areas she visited. Ghana, a former British territory that had achieved independence in 1957, was on her itinerary when she made that trip in 1961. At a time when segregation was still legal in the United States, she was seen dancing with the country's leader, Kwame Nkrumah, on that trip, which was part of a charm offensive in one of the founding members of the Commonwealth. The Queen's deeds, like with so much of her reign, spoke louder than her words. She was commended for her efforts overseas and for allowing the people into the royal household. The Queen's stability was generally seen as a benefit to the monarchy, but her offspring's lives have occasionally been a sore spot for monarchists. Recently, Prince Harry and his wife Meghan claimed that an unknown member of the royal family had inquired about the likely skin tone of their future offspring. The couple will no longer be royalty after they left the United Kingdom in 2020. Queen Elizabeth II was dealing with a mounting crisis involving her son Prince Andrew's acquaintance with the suspected sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein just before they left. To show his support for the Queen, Andrew stepped away from his public duties in November 2019. The Queen, for her part, said very little about the matter. The monarchy's popularity has waned despite the recent difficulties it has encountered. This was not always the situation. With 63 years and 216 days as Queen, she surpassed her great-great-grandmother Victoria as the longest-reigning British monarch in September 2015. Throughout one's long life, many significant moments will come and go. The Queen of England famously remarked, "My own is no exception." She continued to work up until her death, meeting foreign dignitaries, touring cities in the United Kingdom, giving speeches in favor of charitable causes and promoting her kingdom both at home and abroad. However, she did cancel a number of public appearances and events in recent months. So, what can we take away from the life of Queen Elizabeth? For one, she promoted humanitarian efforts as a royal. Queen Elizabeth II served as patron or president of over 500 organizations around the world during her reign. She has maintained a lifelong dedication to philanthropy for the growth opportunities it has provided her with, as well as for the greater good of society. Those who have lived the most social and selfless lives have always seemed to me to be the happiest, contented and fulfilled, she stated in her 2008 Christmas message. Second, she was always giving the spotlight to someone else. She spoke about the unsung heroes whose quiet dedication makes them special. In her 2016 Christmas address, I often get comfort from meeting ordinary people doing great things, volunteers, carers, community organizers, and decent neighbors. She had a soft spot for furry friends. More at home in tweeds than in tiaras was a common way of putting it when describing the Queen's affinity for the land. She was frequently pictured with her horses and her favorite corgis, and she is largely responsible for the breed's increased popularity. However, this does not imply that animal compassion is required for kindness, but it does reveal a softness that pet owners and animal lovers are familiar with. The ability to put another being's needs ahead of one's own and to take pleasure in one another's company without expecting anything in return. And fourth, she always advocated for togetherness in a world that is more polarized along we and them lines. In her first Christmas speech as leader, she observed, "It has always been easy to hate and destroy." This was in 1957. It's significantly more challenging to construct something that you will value and keep. We may hold different points of view, but it is in times of stress and difficulty that we most need to remember that we have much more in common than there is dividing us, she stated in her message over 20 years later in 1974. Last but not least, she never compromised her integrity. Critics can of course tweet about how her entire public character is a carefully orchestrated PR campaign, including her frank participation in London's Olympic opening ceremony in 2012. There might be some truth to the claim that Queen Elizabeth was cordial, clever, amusing, and kind if everyone who has met her agrees on that point, from world leaders to commoners. You can't win every single person all the time, as the old adage goes, and the simplest way to be honest is to act out your ideal self. Do your utmost to present a positive image of yourself at all times. Queen Elizabeth II once observed, "The demands of today's world make it all the more important to keep in mind the obligations we have to those around us. That's the kind of legacy any human being would be pleased to leave behind." This was the life of Queen Elizabeth II, the grandmother of the nation. If you consider this video worthwhile, make sure you press the like button and also subscribe to this channel for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching.